Have you ever seen those heart-wrenching images of starving children with swollen bellies and desperate eyes that became the face of African famine in the late 1960s? Those pictures didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were the product of a brutal, televised conflict that the world watched, but did little to stop: the Biafran War. This wasn't just a war fought with guns and bombs. It was a war fought with hunger, propaganda, and the calculated silence of global superpowers. This is the story of how a struggle for independence turned into one of the 20th century's greatest humanitarian disasters. Our story begins in 1960, when Nigeria, a giant of Africa, celebrated its independence from Britain. But this new nation was a fragile mosaic of over 250 ethnic groups, dominated by three major ones: the House of Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the west, and the Igbo in the east. From the very start, political power and the nation's vast oil wealth were unevenly distributed, breeding deep resentment. The tension was a powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark came in January 1966. A group of military officers, mostly from the Igbo ethnic group, staged a coup, assassinating key political leaders. While they claimed their goal was to end corruption, many in the north saw it as an Igbo power grab. 6 months later, a brutal counter-coup was launched by northern officers. What followed was horrific. Across northern Nigeria, Igbo civilians were targeted in organized pogroms. An estimated 30,000 men, women, and children were massacred. Over 1 million terrified Igbos fled their homes, seeking refuge in their ancestral heartland, the eastern region. The trust that held Nigeria together was shattered. The military governor of the eastern region, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odunkwo Awuka, tried to negotiate a peaceful resolution. At a meeting in Aburi, Ghana, an agreement was reached to create a more decentralized confederation. But upon returning to Nigeria, the federal government, led by General Yakubu Gowon, rejected the key terms of the Aburi Accord. For Euku and the millions of Igbos who had witnessed unimaginable violence, this was the final betrayal. On May 30th, 1967, citing the massacres and the failure of peace talks, Ayuwoku declared the independence of the Republic of Biafra. The federal government in Lagos immediately rejected the secession. The lines were drawn. War was inevitable. Just over a month later, on July 6, 1967, the Nigerian Federal Army launched Operation Unicord, a full-scale invasion of Biafra. General Gowon confidently declared it would be a quick police action, over in a matter of weeks. Initially, the Biafran forces surprised everyone. They not only held their ground, but also launched a daring counteroffensive, pushing into Nigeria's Midwestern region. For a brief moment, it seemed a young republic might just survive. But the tide turned quickly. The Nigerian Federal Army was far larger and better equipped. Crucially, it had powerful international allies. Britain, Nigeria's former colonial ruler, wanted to protect its significant oil investments in the Niger Delta and maintain a unified Nigeria. So they supplied arms and logistical support to the federal government. The Soviet Union, looking to gain a foothold in Africa during the Cold War, provided MiG fighter jets that gave the Nigerian Air Force total dominance. Within months, the Biafran army was pushed back, and the borders of their fledgling nation began to shrink. Biafra was completely encircled, cut off by land, sea, and air. The stage was set for a catastrophe. With the blockade in full effect, the Nigerian strategy shifted from conventional warfare to something far more sinister: starvation. The federal government declared that food was a legitimate weapon of war. Shipments of food, medicine, and other essential supplies were completely cut off from the millions of civilians trapped inside Biafra. The result was a man-made famine of apocalyptic proportions. The world watched in horror as images, broadcast for the first time from a war zone in Africa, filled television screens. These were pictures of emaciated children, too weak to cry, their bodies ravaged by a protein deficiency disease called kwashiorkor. The crisis gave birth to modern humanitarianism as we know it. Organizations like the International Red Cross and a new group of French doctors, who would later form Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, scrambled to organize airlifts of aid. Flying at night in rickety planes, dodging anti-aircraft fire, these brave pilots and aid workers delivered what little they could, but it was never enough. The death toll from starvation and disease climbed relentlessly, eventually exceeding 1 million people, the vast majority of them children. While people starved, a different war was being waged in the media. Both sides understood the power of public opinion. Biafra, with its highly educated diaspora, launched a sophisticated propaganda campaign. They portrayed their struggle as a fight for survival against genocide, drawing parallels to the plight of the Jewish people. They skillfully used the horrifying images of starving children to appeal to the conscience of the world. Catholic and Protestant missionary networks, active in the predominantly Christian Biafra, amplified this message, lobbying governments and raising funds. On the other side, the Nigerian government worked to frame the conflict as an internal rebellion, a necessary fight to preserve national unity against an illegitimate tribal insurrection. They accused Biafra of exaggerating the famine for political gain. The world's superpowers were caught in the middle, torn between their geopolitical interests and public pressure. While France and a few African nations like Cote d'Ivoire offered Biafra limited, often covert, support, the major powers officially backed one Nigeria. The oil in the Niger Delta was simply too valuable to risk. So despite widespread public sympathy for the Biafran people, no nation was willing to intervene decisively. By the end of 1969, 3 years of war and starvation had taken their toll. The Biafran military was exhausted, outgunned, and running out of territory. The humanitarian situation was beyond desperate. Realizing the fight was lost and wanting to prevent further loss of life, Oyukwo fled into exile in Cote d'Ivoire. He handed over leadership to his second-in-command, Philip Effiong. It was Effiong who had the heartbreaking task of announcing the surrender. On January 15, 1970, the Republic of Biafra ceased to exist. In his victory speech, Nigeria's leader, General Gowon, famously declared a policy of no victor, no vanquished, promising reconciliation, reconstruction, and reintegration. He aimed to heal the deep wounds of the war and bring the Igbo people back into the Nigerian fold. However, while large-scale reprisals were avoided, the trauma and mistrust lingered. The war left a permanent scar on the Nigerian psyche. In total, it is estimated that over 2 million people died during the Biafran War, most not from bullets, but from hunger. The conflict served as a brutal lesson for the world on the power of media in modern warfare and the politics of humanitarian aid. It highlighted the tragic consequences that occur when geopolitical, Interests and oil wealth are prioritized over human lives. Today, the memory of Biafra remains a powerful and sensitive topic in Nigeria. It continues to fuel separatist sentiments and serves as a somber reminder of a dream that was born in hope and died in starvation, all while the world watched. Thank you so much for watching. The story of Biafra is a complex and painful one, but it's crucial that we remember it. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the events that have shaped our world. We'll see you in the next one.